Good afternoon. My name is Porsha Olayiwola, and I'll be reading a poem for you all. And it's entitled Boston Ode. Can you name a love without rigor, without sweet ache and stretch and sunshine and sweat? Boston, parent of our hallowed America, someone else's God before the land was conquered. Not the city we are born of, but it is a charitable home. The same way the city upon a hill gave birth to a country, and we are all now inside a nation and unbelonging at once. There's not a love I can fathom with neither push nor pull, with neither grit nor sorrow nor glory raining out the other end. What is a home, then, if unhinged and locked? Beloved city, gym with bodegas on its corners, each studded with a cat guarding the front stoop. Gracious current, ringing the rush of the river, the calm of the pond and the guilt of the ocean, hushing secrets along Dorchester's shores. Beantown, the best to keep the cap. Slades on Tremont and Bentus and Rosendale. Home is the booth we plop into. The cafes where the cashier craft meals that fill us. Dear city, Southwest corridor thumbing from the subway racing against air, patron saint of travelers, plague of trolleys, hold us still at lights, unlearn us bustle, and hand us patience. Memorandum to slow. Remind us who it is we are and the blood love it took to raise us. City of building blocks, place of clear water, of culture shaping, of planting and planning, tri-heeled city. Tip the cup of tea and bring on the massacre. City of building up, 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 and people out, out, out. City of ramming, city of running, of shifting, pacing, fast, gone, champion of all, parade for everything, celebrate the house, the keeper of our bones, nest to our families. Who will want if we won't, and what is a heart if it does not pulse, does not pull itself toward itself and extract itself away again? What is a heart if it doesn't pause? Then continue, as to remind the body it has chosen to keep going. The gallant and the trodden, the gentrified and the migrant, from Roxbury to the seaport, Harbor, Castle Island, cobbled stone tomb of chess, cobbled stone town, always shouting our melancholy big on your pavements, always chasing friends away and further into your arms, sirened city. Sunbathe, sillied picnic, public garden concerts, you beautiful summer, you firework and worth it all, you cold heat to my head, investor in wealth and health, eldest master, first future of our states, teacher of love long standing, of might and fight and force, politics and wind, blow a barbed breeze, cutting kisses across the face. Oh, city I love, oh, city I know, and walk the lawn of, city I carry between my cheeks, around my neck, city I found along my palms, under my nails, city of song blaring, of loud leaping rhythm, familiar and inescapable, calling out to each of us by heart, singing out to all of us by name. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Catherine Kennedy, the proud director of the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground at Boston University. It is my honor to serve as your host today as we celebrate the life and the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Please join me in applauding our opening speaker, Porsha Olayiwola. The poet, she is the Poet Laureate of Boston. A Jamaica Plain resident, Porsha is the artistic director at Mass Leap, a literary nonprofit in Massachusetts serving young artists. In 2018, she was named by GK 100 as one of Boston's most influential people of color. She is also a Master's of Fine Arts candidate at Emerson College and has a full-length collection of poetry forthcoming in 2019 with Button Poetry. Thank you, Porsha. Today's program is a collaboration between the City of Boston and Boston University in partnership with the Museum of African American History and featuring the music of the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra's intensive community program and Boston University's own Inner Strength Gospel Choir. Last year, as some of you might remember, the City of Boston held its annual Day of Service and Celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in this very ballroom at 10:30 a.m. Following the city's event, Boston University held its annual day program, Words Beyond the Dream, at 1 p.m. While both events were a success, there was no denying the incredible opportunity to collaborate on a single celebration of Dr. King moving forward. Last week, the Honorable Martin J. Walsh, mayor of our great city, told the world, if you want to learn how to bring people together, not push them apart, look to Boston. I am proud the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., especially the time he spent in our city of Boston and on our campus at Boston University, has brought us all together today. And so, to formally welcome you to this afternoon's celebration, it is my privilege to introduce the Honorable Martin J. Walsh, Mayor of Boston.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you for that introduction. I want to thank President Bob Brown and BU for hosting us today. This is an amazing crowd, again, second year in a row, and I love it. I want to thank all the elected and appointed officials that are here with us today. Thank you for being here today. I want to thank Commissioner Willie Gross, who's with us as well this morning. Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank our Poet Laureate, too. She's not new to Boston. She's new to the job of Poet Laureate. And I want to thank you for an incredible poem, and thank you for what you do in our city. To all the residents and guests that are here today, welcome. To the students coming back from winter break, welcome back. For the students that are coming back from spring break from Kansas City, sorry. Kinda. But no, honestly, it's my honor to welcome you all to the City of Boston, the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Celebration. We are proud to co-host with Boston University. BU brought Dr. King to Boston, and we will be ever grateful for them for that. And there's no better example of what this university is and our colleges are than seeing them bring our city to life with the young, inspirational minds that come to our city every day. Last Tuesday would have been Dr. King's 90th birthday. It's moving to think that he still could have been with us today. But if we know that his spirit still lives on with us, if we listen to the message, listen to and learn from his values, and strive to make his dream a reality in our city and in our country, it's important to name that dreams, that this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of creed, of all people are created equal. It's also important to remember that Dr. King returned to Boston in 1965, and he said this: Boston must be a testing ground for the ideals of freedom. And I just spoke a few minutes ago to some young people in Roxbury at the DeWitt Center, and I was talking to them about the time that Dr. King in the city and how this inspired him to be partly what he taught and what he spoke and what he preached of. And the young people sitting in the auditorium that little while ago, that he came to the city never and expecting probably that he was going to be such an inspiration and literally change the world. And I told them to think big and dream big and don't let anything hold them back, because there's opportunities here with you Today, our country needs to hear Dr. King's message more than ever, and also needs to hear our young people's message as well, more than ever. And today, Boston is rising up and striving to live out these ideals more than any other time in the history of our city. It starts in the places which nurtured Dr. King as a young man, Boston University, where he studied, the 12th Baptist Church in Roxbury, where he preached, and the entire African-American community. We are a city of black and white, Latino and Asian, immigrants and native, gay and straight, men and women, young and old. We've been moved to answer Dr. King's call in government since the first day that we took our administration. We launched community dialogues on race to create a more open and equal conversation of race in Boston. We created the Office of Diversity that's helping us make sure the Boston workforce reflects Boston's people and community. We're bringing a more equitable situation the way that we bid out our city contracts in public lands. And we're going to take a step further. I mentioned the other night that I'm going to sign an executive order on racial equity, amongst other things. It requires city employees and city contractors to be trained and recognized to fix disparities in our city services. This movement inside and outside of City Hall is changing the culture and the perception of our city. Recently, we were named the finalists for the 2020 NAACP convention here in Boston. I asked everyone to let the NAACP know how welcome they would be in our city in the year 2020. We know that our work is not done, but we see the change. We see it in our young people, we see it in our neighborhoods, we see it in our city council and our state legislatures. We see it in our talented public safety leaders like Commissioner Gross, Sheriff Tompkins, and District Attorney Rachel Rawlings. And we certainly see it and will hear it in today's speaker, in the Massachusetts' first African-American woman in Congress, Boston's own Ayanna Pressley. And I am grateful to have a role model like Congresswoman Pressley for the young people of Boston. And I'm grateful for her vocal and moral leadership already in Washington. She's already made us proud, and for somebody who's worked with her, I'm not surprised. I'm also grateful that I'm speaking before her and not after her, so I can talk about her. But the spirit of Dr. King is certainly still moving our city. We are determined to capitalize on this moment and to bring the King's vision of justice and equality to the heart of our city. That's what the King Boston Project is all about. We're developing a major memorial to Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott in Boston Common, and it's a tribute to their time in our city, where they met, where they fell in love, and where they formed their vision. A memorial has been talked about a lot for years in having one in Boston, and we're thrilled to finally make it a reality. It will change the story that our most famous public spaces tell for the next generation, for the world. King Boston is more than a memorial. It came out of a lot of conversations led by Paul English and some other folks, but Paul got us started to build a conversation of people, started to add people's voices to the dialogue, started talking about what we're going to do, what this really is this a memorial more than a memorial? And it is. It's also going to create the new King Center for Economic Justice in Roxbury. It will fund educational programs in collaboration with the 12th Baptist Church, where Dr. King preached from, and all across our city. And it will keep us moving in the right direction of that dream. And it will help us call to the attention to existing networks of Black history in our city. In February, in honor of Black History Month, I will convene Boston leaders to walk the Black Heritage Trail and visit the Museum of African American History on Beacon Hill that does so much to share this history. We need to be clear, Black history is Boston history, and it's equal rights and opportunities for Boston's values. Thank you, Representative Holmes. We are on our way to make this project a reality. We have strong community input from the very beginning. We are close to selecting a design for the memorial, and we are making progress in our funding goals. The monument is building. To work this movement deep into our city's foundation to help keep the change, the cultural change for the better, and make Dr. King's dream a reality. But we need to continue leadership across every single sector. To that end, I'd like to invite to the podium the president of Boston University, Bob Brown, for a special announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking the mayor for his leadership in drawing attention and support to the effort to honor Dr. King and his living legacy. The mayor has brought a sense of energy and elevated importance to the community's desire to honor Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. As many of you know, and as the mayor mentioned, Martin Luther King Jr. earned his doctorate here at Boston University. During that time, he met his future wife, Coretta Scott. He walked our halls and sidewalks, learned from our professors, and preached in Marsh Chapel. We also are proud to be the curators of his papers. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we are enthusiastic supporters of the mayor's initiative and that that of the organizing committee of King Boston. To that end, I am announcing this afternoon that Boston University will participate in the funding of the memorial. Using funds from alumni and friends, we have pledged $250,000 to help build an appropriate memorial. Thank you. And to ensure that his legacy remains vibrant and relevant to our city. We hope and expect that this will see the project through to completion and that future generations of Bostonians and visitors will appreciate Martin Luther King's extraordinary legacy and what his years in Boston meant to him, to Mrs. King, and to all of us. Thank you.
Devin Harvin, originally from Baltimore, Maryland, is a senior in Boston University's College of Arts and Sciences, majoring in history. He is the president of the Boston University Student Government. Please join me in welcoming Devin to the podium.
Good afternoon. On behalf of our beloved community, the 33,000 students, 10,000 plus faculty and staff, and the multitude of alumni across the globe known as Boston University, I would like to welcome you to our celebration of the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The privilege to draw from the same well of learning and discovery as Dr. King reflects light on three iconic elements of his life. First, his willingness to sacrifice his individual desires for the betterment of the community inspires generations of Boston University students dedicate their lives toward the betterment of others. Secondly, Dr. King reminds us of the importance of the community that surrounds a leader. It would be difficult to speak on the brilliance of Dr. King without mentioning the likes of Howard Washington Thurman or Benjamin Elijah Mays, who molded and pushed Dr. King to become a courageous and visionary leader. Finally, I'm ensured in the power of a dream because of the man that Dr. King was. His dream of equality and justice is still in the works, but nonetheless, his dream catalyzed a movement. I'll end with an excerpt from one of Dr. King's sermons entitled Antidotes for Fear. Faith transforms the whirlwind of despair into a warm and reviving breeze of hope. The words of a motto which a generation ago were commonly found on the wall in the homes of devout persons need to be etched on our hearts. Fear knocked at the door. Faith answered. There was no one there. Thank you.
Lamerche Frazier, fiber artist, holographer, and poet, has served as Director of Education and Interpretation for the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket, for 15 years. She highlights the museum's collection and exhibits, providing place-based education and interdisciplinary history programs and projects and lectures, most recently promoting STEM and STEAM education pedagogy. She has served the artistic community for over 20 years as an award-winning national and international visual and performance artist and poet. Her selected works are included in several art publications and in the permanent collections of the Museum of Art and Design, the Smithsonian Institute, and the White House. Please join me in welcoming Lamerchi Frazier.
Good afternoon. Before I begin my remarks, I'd just like to say that I'm supposed to bring welcome, and I'd like each of you, if you will turn to your right and your left and say welcome to each and everyone in this room. If you will just turn to your right and left and do that, to honor the diversity and the beautiful faces that are in this audience today. It is a mark and a love of Martin Luther King, who brought us here together in this auditorium. And I'd like to thank the collaborators in this program, first of all, the BYSO and Intensive Community Program, Boston University, the City of Boston, and now as I represent the Museum of African American History, I bring to you greetings from its CEO and President, Marita Rivera, its board, and the staff of the museum. We are honored to be at Boston University today because one of the founders of the Museum of African American History and its most ardent founder was Mrs. Sue Bailey Thurman. Without her, we would not have had that wonderful African meeting house to meet in and to continue the tradition of what we are here to do today. I want to say that the collaboration has been in effect to bring the wonderful talents of our children here in this room and in the African Meeting House and in Faneuil Hall for over 15 years. And so with that, I would like to say that we honor this as a privilege to share with you, to bring you here. And with the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who tells us when we consider positive power in organizations, if I may read, he said, "There is nothing essentially wrong with power. It is a positive and legitimate call to action, which we must intensify in the future. We must develop from strength a situation in which a government finds it wise and prudent to collaborate with us. Power, as we manage to create underground railroads, protest groups, self-help societies, and the churches that have always been our refuge, our source of support, and our source of action. We must turn more of our energies and focus our creativity on the useful things that translate into power. We, in this generation, must do the work, and in doing it, stimulate our children to learn and acquire higher levels of skill and technique." He goes on to say that power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. So let's celebrate those words, and let's celebrate our talented and delightful children who are our musicians today to bring us wonderful music as the BYSO Intensive Community Program turns 20. They will next be under the direction of Marta Zulrad to bring us wonderful music. Thank you.
The Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras has been providing high-quality classical music training to children for over 60 years. The BYSO's Intensive Community Program is a rigorous instrumental training program that serves students from populations traditionally underrepresented in the classical musical field. This season, ICP celebrates its 20th anniversary, 20 years of commitment to diversifying the future of classical music, and 20 years of supporting the next generation of young musicians. These young musicians performing in front of you today represent the exceptional talent, dedication, and motivation that keeps our city and our spirits alive. Please welcome their conductor, Mata Zurad.
Welcome, everybody. First of all, on behalf of musicians and myself, would like to say we are honored to play in this celebration today. And first, we would like to share with you Mozart Divertimento. There are 3 beautiful short movements, and we hope you will enjoy it.
Augustine Jimenez, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, is a junior in Boston University's Pardee School of Global Studies, majoring in international relations. He sits on the executive board of Alianza Latina, Boston University's largest Latin student organization. Please join me in welcoming Augustine Jimenez.
Good afternoon. In a moment, I will share with you a speech delivered by Dr. King in 1962, which I had the privilege of identifying with the help of the Boston University Howard Gottlieb Archival Research Center, home to the Martin Luther King Jr. Papers collection. Following this program, I encourage you to visit the MLK Reading Room, home to the thousands of Dr. King's primary documents and artifacts, located in Mugar Library, just next door. Our friends at the archives have opened it especially for you today, and it will remain open until 6:30 p.m. I will now put on these gloves to protect the integrity of Dr. King's original speech draft. An address delivered by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Atlanta, Georgia, on the occasion of the formation of the Gandhi Society for Human Rights, the Sheraton Carlton Hotel, May 17, 1962. This occasion might well signalize not one anniversary, but several apparently disparate events. Actually, they are components of one tapestry of human experience, a tapestry which depicts justice's stubborn struggle to be dominant in the affairs of men. The historic Supreme Court decision on school desegregation, the threshold of the centennial anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, the founding of the Gandhi Society for Human Rights, and the 100th anniversary of the death of Henry David Thoreau are all celebrated this year. Thoreau has said there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the roots. I believe that we who are here today are those striking at the root of evil, not at its branches. It is altogether fitting that on these overlapping anniversaries of liberal triumphs, a distinguished group of public citizens should form a new society dedicated to progress through nonviolence. Thoreau's anniversary reminds us that the concepts of civil disobedience and nonviolence are part of the American tradition. But it is only now that its use in widespread practice has engaged the American people and established itself irrevocably as a lever for social change. Nonviolence is now woven into the fabric of American life in hundreds of boycotts across the South. It is marked on the jail walls of thousands of cells of freedom riders. It sits in majestic democratic dignity upon thousands of lunch counter stools. Nonviolent protest is no longer a bizarre or alien concept. It wins battles for justice with as much lethal effectiveness as the blazing six-shooters of the old frontier or the more contemporary punch in the jaw. It may well mark a new stage for mankind in which his conduct acquired a more civilized quality, even as he continues a bitter struggle for broader democratic freedoms. Because this day is so filled with historic significance, my organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, chose it to deliver to President Kennedy a document we consider to be a landmark contribution in the struggle for civil rights. We have asked the President, on the centennial anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, to issue an executive order which would rededicate the nation to the principles of that noble proclamation. The rededication we seek would not be limited to hollow words, however. We ask that he proclaim all segregation statutes of all Southern states to be contrary to the Constitution and that the full powers of his office be employed to avoid their enforcement. Just as Abraham Lincoln made the tragic sacrifices of the Civil War worth enduring when he ended human chattel slavery with a stroke of the pen, President Kennedy can change the totality of life of the Negro in the South by the issuance of this executive order we have proposed. 100 years ago today, it was far from certain that a republic would survive. It has survived through all the turbulent upheavals of a century, and the president securely occupies his office under the mandates of the Constitution. But who would have thought that the president, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, would be confronted with a grotesque array of race problems. Who would have thought that despite the spectacular growth of the nation, backward and brutal institutions of segregation and discrimination would cling like ugly parasites to the ship of state? Who would have thought that the particular president in the White House in 1962 would himself have been a victim of prejudice and discrimination because he is of a minority religion? Who would have thought that 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and the enactment of the 14th Amendment, millions of qualified Negroes still would have no vote and would be as totally excluded from the democratic electoral process as their slave forebears had been? Our republic did survive, but it lived and grew with visible scars which a century has still failed to heal. 100 years is a long time. Even 1 year is too long if you're deprived of your rights. Even 1 day is too long. We believe with the Supreme Court that justice too long delayed is justice denied. That is why we are here today. That is why Thoreau's observation about striking at branches or roots is so pertinent. For so long, so many have grimly torn away branches of evil, only to find they are to grow again. The day has come to dig to the roots and put an end to these evils for all time. We know where we were 100 years ago. We know where we are today. Where will our nation be 100 years from now? We can bend its moral arc towards justice if we unroot the twisted tangle of evil statutes which unlawfully deprived Negroes of elementary rights. To that noble task, nearly 20 million Negroes are dedicated. Millions of sincere white Americans stand with us. The invincible will of justice and democracy undergird our struggle. All of the armies of the earth, all of the parliaments, all of the presidents, prime ministers, and kings are not stronger than one single moral idea which tenaciously demands fulfillment. The fulfillment will come because from the first day an American farmer shouldered a musket for liberty, to this day, a national character was being formed, which could only grow if it lived in a climate of decency and fair play. That fulfillment will come because America must do it to remain American in the next 100 years. Thank you.
In an interview in 1963, responding to the bombing incidences in Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. King said, "I heard a rising chorus of beautiful singing. Tears came into my eyes that at such a tragic moment, my race still could sing its hope and faith. In a sense, songs are the soul of a movement." To continue in that tradition, we present Boston University's Inner Strength Gospel Choir singing the Brotherhood Medley under the direction of Herbert Jones.
If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show living shall not be in vain. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yes I will. You've got a friend. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yes I will. You got a friend. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Don't you know I just might have a problem that you understand? We all need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Don't you know I just might have a problem that you understand? We all need somebody to lean on. Call me, call me, call me, call me. All you gotta do is call me, call me, call me, call me. All you gotta do is call me, call me, call me, call me. All you gotta do is call me, call me, call me, call me. All you gotta do is call me, call me, call me, call me. We all need somebody to lean on.
On April 18th, 1959, Dr. King, along with several other civil rights leaders, spoke before 26,000 black high school and college students who had come to the nation's capital to demonstrate their support for the 1954 Supreme Court decision against racial segregation in the nation's public schools. Our next reader once played with the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras and is a veteran of its intensive community program, playing in this concert each year. Her primary instrument is the violin. Now an activist and senior at the New England School of Law, graduating this coming May, Ayanna has returned as a reader-leader representing excerpts from Speech Before the Youth March for Integrated Schools by Dr. King. I give you BYSO alumna, class of 2009, Ayanna.
As I stand here and look out upon the thousands of Negro faces and the thousands of white faces, intermingled like the waters of a river, I see only one face, the face of the future. Yes, as I gaze upon this great historic assembly, this unprecedented gathering of young people, the fact that thousands of you came here to Washington and that thousands more signed your petition proves that this generation will not take no for an answer, will not take double talk for an answer, will not take gradualism for an answer. It proves that the only answer you will settle for is total desegregation and total equality now. The deep meaning, the great power, and the unconquerable spirit back of this inspiringly original, uniquely American march of young people demonstrates to me, above all else, is that you, young people, through your own experience, have somehow discovered the central fact of American life, that the extension of democracy for all Americans depends upon complete integration. By coming here, you have shown yourselves to be highly alert, highly responsible young citizens, and very soon the area of your responsibility will increase, for you will begin to exercise your greatest privilege as an American, the right to vote. We could change the composition of Congress. We could have a Congress far more responsive to the voters' will. A new era would open to all Americans. Thus, the Negro, in his struggle to secure his own rights, is destined to enlarge democracy for all people in both a political and social sense. Indeed, in your great movement to organize a march for integrated schools, you have actually accomplished much more. This is really a noble cause. As June approaches with its graduation ceremonies and speeches, a thought suggests itself. You will hear much about careers, security, and prosperity. Whatever career you may choose for yourself, doctor, lawyer, teacher, let me propose an avocation to be pursued along with it. Become a dedicated fighter for civil rights. Make it a central part of your life. It will make you a better doctor, a better lawyer, a better teacher. It will enrich your spirit as nothing else possibly can. It will give you that rare sense of nobility that can only spring from love and selflessly helping your fellow man. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to invite and introduce Mr. Owen Young from Boston Symphony Orchestra to join us in performing Vivaldi G minor concerto for two cello, first movement. Welcome. we will be now sharing with you a bass ensemble piece. If the bass ensemble could come forward, that would be great. Oh, Happy Day.
Ayanna Pressley is the United States Representative for Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District. Her history-making election in 2018 marked the first time a woman of color was elected to serve the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in Congress. The Congresswoman is an advocate, a policymaker, an activist, and a survivor, and has dedicated her life to working with community to break cycles of poverty and violence. It is my true privilege and joy to welcome Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley to Boston University.
Stop that. Sit down. Thank you, everyone. So I heard a rumor that I'm supposed to be delivering a keynote, which I suppose that means I'm supposed to speak the longest. And although I am the granddaughter of a Baptist preacher, I have no designs or plans to do that today. We have already enjoyed an incredible program, and I don't intend on being here long, especially since I feel myself already deviating from my prepared remarks. But before I say anything else, can we please just applaud our sign language interpreters who have been doing an incredible job. So I appreciate the welcome, which is really much more of a reunion. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Boston is an adopted home for me. And I applied in full transparency to Harvard and to Boston University. Now, Harvard rejected me, which you best believe I remind them every time they invite me to lecture. But it is so apropos that I would be here with my friends and colleagues in government in this joint collaborative event with the city of Boston, with Boston University, also with the museum and the BYSO, because each of those changed the trajectory of my life. Boston University, when I came here as a student and later was elected as a leader on student government, I was a student senator, I was president of my college, I was a president's host. So my leadership development was really fortified here. It was at the George Sherman Union where I learned how to begin navigating very tough conversations. It was at Marsh Chapel that my faith was fortified. I had spent my entire childhood saying, when I go to college, I'm not gonna get up and go to church because I don't have to. And yet, I still found my way to Marsh Chapel, and that is where my faith was fortified. It was actually at a Martin Luther King Day event that I was organizing in my capacity as president of my college, a day that we had deemed a day on, not off, a day of service, that I met Congressman Barney Frank and Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II and set my sights on that I would earn an internship with one of them before the day was over. And it was ultimately Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II. I began as an intern there, and ultimately he hired me as his Social Security liaison, truly a rarefied education and illuminating in the power of lawmaking and the power of advocacy. And then from there, I went on to work for United States Senator John Kerry for 11 years. And from there, thanks to many in this room, had the humbling honor of serving as a Boston City Councilor for 8 years. And now, from a Boston University student to an intern in the office of Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II, I now hold that office and that seat in Congress. So it is really very surreal and very full circle. And then so far as the arts and the humanities, my mother made sure that I read Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and Maya Angelou and so many others, and that I did go to the Symphony. We very often talk about the achievement gap, but there's another gap, and it's a navigation gap. And because my mother exposed me to arts and culture and the humanities, I knew that the world was bigger than my tough city block on the north side of Chicago. And it gave me a sense of agency, and dare I say, even entitlement to the world, and has better equipped me to negotiate any room and to navigate this world. And so again, it is very apropos, very timely that I would be here on this day for this collaborative event, and I thank you for the honor. I also wanted to just say how much I appreciate Paul English and the committee and the vision of this committee to create a statue and a tribute to both Martin and Coretta. This is especially important, and I stand firmly in this as the first Black woman elected to the Boston City Council, and now the first Black woman elected to represent this great Commonwealth in the House of Representatives, that the role of women and the role of Black women has been reduced, if not all erased, from civil rights, and in many other ways. And so it is heartening to see that we are reclaiming our time, in the words of Auntie Maxine, in the corridors of power, at policy and decision-making tables. Black women have been the backbone of our communities. We have been the truth tellers. We have been the justice seekers. And as the most reliable voting constituency in 3 presidential elections, we have been the preservers of democracy. And so we lift up Martin, but we must also lift up Coretta. And so before I move on, if you'll indulge me, I do want to share one of my favorite quotes from her. Now, of course, Coretta was a dedicated, self-sacrificing partner to Martin, the man. She was also a very talented opera singer. Roosevelt said, "Do what you can where you are with what you have." And that is exactly what Coretta did. She sang the songs, the freedom songs that fueled this movement, that were a salve and a balm for calloused feet and weary hands and fatigued hearts. And she said, Coretta Scott King said, "I must remind you that starving a child is violence. Neglecting school children is violence. Punishing a mother and her family is violence. Discrimination against a working man is violence. Ghetto housing is violence. Ignoring medical need is violence. And contempt for poverty is violence." Let us each dedicate ourselves to eradicating violence in all its forms. And may in the future, whenever we pay tribute to Martin, we also pay tribute to Coretta, who assumed the mantle of his work after his assassination. Now, as humbled and as honored as I am to be before you as a member of Congress, I know that I'm only here because of those that came before me, because so many prayed for me and with me, and joined alongside me in this disruptive, radical endeavor. I do believe our electoral victory was radical. And that is why it is challenging for me in this moment to summon adequate words to pay tribute to a radical who blazed a trail for me, for all of us. And indeed, Dr. King was a radical. He was a revolutionary dreamer. He was aspirational in his vision. He was a courageous pacifist. But don't get it twisted. He was a radical. Because the literal definition of radical is someone who seeks extreme change of habits, of conditions, or institutions. Dr. King, and very similarly to our journey of 2018, ushered in change and a paradigm shift. He was a drum major for social justice, but again, more than a dreamer, more than a revolutionary, he was a radical in what he espoused, in what he practiced, and in what he passed on. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was radical in truth-telling. He was radical in love. He was radical in his organizing, in his mobilizing. He was radical in his push for lawmaking. He was radical in his promoting for peace. Lest we forget that he was wildly unpopular before his assassination in Memphis, and often on the wrong side of debates with Black militants, outspoken against the Vietnam War, and out of step with the Democratic Party and strategist with his tactics. That is why, in the face of our longest government shutdown, the growing concern that the women's movement cannot possibly keep up this momentum, the continued battle to keep the Voting Rights Act intact, and the occupant of the White House continued rhetoric and action to make this country unwelcoming to immigrants, that we summon Dr. King. That we realize that although tremendous gains have been made, each day we are acutely aware that these gains are not guarantees. They are being threatened, eroded, and rolled back every day. Our commitment to achieving racial and economic progress must be deeper than a trendy hashtag or a cute bumper sticker. We must codify our work in lawmaking. Dr. King gave us the blueprint: organize, mobilize, legislate. Like Dr. King, we must be radical and audacious enough to believe that it is possible to both resist and to progress at the same time. The choice is not between a border wall and an open government. We can progress as a country of immigrants while resisting the call of xenophobia. We can believe and elevate the stories of survivors and hold those in government accountable. If we choose to be radical in our thinking, then we can break free of false choices that pit our fears against our hope. Dr. King showed us the way to be radical in the search and the pursuit for justice. And I urge all of us to continue to embody that radicalness, to not shy away from it. Very often while I'm in Washington, the first congressional class to be seated in the history of a government shutdown, the biggest congressional class since the Watergate babies. Not that surprising, since when that class was elected, the country was incredibly polarized. Corruption abounded. And that is when more people were elected than ever before as an affront and in the resistance to what was happening in that administration. Sound familiar? So I'm a part of the first congressional class in history the 116th Congress, to be seated in the midst of a government shutdown. This is the biggest class in history and also the most diverse, inclusive, and representative class in the history of our country. I know there are those that think we have to keep making binary choices, and the pundits will make this a debate of the left versus the right. And I think it really is, in the words of one of my dear colleagues, it's just about the bottom and the top. And that is why we must soldier on in our radical pursuit of social and economic justice. There are those who think we are too bold, who think us too aspirational. But I know that our electoral victory was less a referendum against hate and more a mandate for hope. It is for that reason, no matter how sobering the landscape, I refuse to put radical hope on a shelf. I remember for Dr. King and his push and his advocacy that many felt that what he was demanding was unwise and untimely. If I'm telling the whole truth, there are many who thought this very holiday being established was unwise and untimely. But it is not unwise and untimely to advocate for a bold Green New Deal when the future of our planet is in jeopardy. It is not unwise and untimely to call for the abolishment of ICE when children are dying in American custody. It is not unwise and untimely to demand systemic criminal justice reform when Black and brown communities are torn apart by mass incarceration and police brutality. It is not unwise and untimely to legislate comprehensive solutions to our gun violence epidemic. And it is not unwise and untimely to demand that survivors of sexual assault be believed when perpetrators continue to rise to positions of power. It is not unwise and untimely to organize and march for the rights of women and girls, to elect women to represent us in the halls of power, to inform and to lead on every single policy that we legislate. And it is certainly not unwise and untimely to ensure that all federal workers, including furloughed contract workers, actually get paid for an honest day's work. I've only been in Congress for a few short weeks. Often I'm asked if I'm growing cynical or if I am fatigued by the climate and the circumstance we find ourselves in. I don't have the time or the luxury to be cynical or tired. Our victory was a mandate for hope, and I intend to keep it. Yes, we find ourselves in unprecedented and uncertain times, but like King and Coretta, I have the certainty of vision, a belief in the power of us and in the movement. I know these times demand and require unprecedented organizing, unprecedented mobilizing, unprecedented legislating, and unprecedented hope. And so as I leave you, I ask that each of you would continue to be radical in the actualization of justice, of hope, and of love. And I thank you for the honor of sharing this moment with you.
we would be happy right now to play for you one of my favorite spirituals, Freedom Train.
Arshel Telemark, originally from Kennesaw, Georgia, is a sophomore in Boston University's College of Communication, majoring in mass communication. Arshel is a Howard Thurman Center student ambassador and a DJ on Boston University's own radio station, WTBU. Please join me in welcoming Arshel Telemark.
Before I begin, I just want to thank the musicians in the house. They are incredible, and I thank them for sharing their art. This piece is titled, In Light of Fear. It's in a binder. I'm going to take it out, actually. This is hard. Dear Dr. King, I cannot sit idly by on this day when we celebrate your name, your life, and your story. A story we hear in the earliest days of our youth, where we hear the words and we learn about your mission, your life, and the progress that you made in this nation. Your story, where we see images of the movement you led coincide with lessons in mathematics, spelling test, and recess. A name that is coupled with the line, "I have a dream," as we learned that you marched on Washington, that you sat in Birmingham jail, and that you strode for freedom from the hillside to the mountaintops. Your life permeates history, and it reminds us of your work fighting to liberate the new age man from the contemporary shackles of freedom and slavery, the contemporary shackles of contemporary slavery. Dr. King, I speak these words hoping that they do not fall upon deaf ears. Hear me now as I seek advice, solace, and liberation from what is now modern day injustice. Injustice where my life, my mere existence remains taboo. Injustice looms over us in a deep, dark cloud of despair and disruption, where justice seems years away and our walk in the desert seems as it has only just begun. And Dr. King, I fear this. But Dr. King, I ask you, and I remind you that we follow in your footsteps day in and out as we walk through this desert. And we remember that your work only scratched the surface. And we remember your name, your life, your story. We remember as we march not only in Washington, but march in Ferguson, in Baltimore, in Baton Rouge, in Boston. But Dr. King, I remind you that we also remember your work as bands of women rally together and march so we can be recognized as a man's equal. We remember as students cry so when they enter their schools, they are safe havens and not hells where they have to gamble for life. Dr. King, we remember, and we are Black, we are Latina, we are queer, we are old, we are young, we are abled, we are disabled. We are a coalition here to fulfill your dream of peace. But earlier, Dr. King, I said I fear, I am fearful. But this fear comes within good reason, because I am fearful that the taboo will replace the norm. I am fearful because one day the world that we see will abandon its current self and leave it foreign as it falls into greater hands. I am fearful because I believe change is already coming and that our wait is over. And these fears, they do not paralyze me, nor do they discourage my will. Rather, they lend me the will to believe. These fears give me hope to do more, to dream. These fears remind me that I am your dream. So I look unto fear, and I am reminded that it is only here to propel me to do much greater in this world.
And now musicians and I would like to share with you another spiritual hold on.
We welcome back Boston University's Inner Strength Gospel Choir, an award-winning, non-denominational, student-run organization. They are devoted to glorifying God through song and praise. Established in 1973, Inner Strength is a diverse choir comprised of domestic and international students from different academic majors at the university with different experiences and beliefs. They come together each Sunday evening of the academic year to sing songs of thanks and praise, as well as to support and encourage one another in their daily lives. Their music is arranged and composed by their illustrious director, Herbert Jones, and I am proud to say that I serve as their advisor. Inner Strength. I am delighted to now more formally introduce the president of Boston University, Dr. Robert A. Brown. Educated as a chemical engineer, Dr. Brown was elected the university's 10th president in 2005. Under his leadership, the university is pursuing a strategic plan entitled Choosing to be Great, that is expanding our faculty and strengthening undergraduate education, research, and scholarship. It is my pleasure to introduce President Robert A. Brown of Boston University.
Good afternoon. And I want to thank everyone for braving the cold to come into this very warm gathering this afternoon. And I am honored to share the stage this afternoon with so many colleagues and guests who have gathered to celebrate the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. with us today. I also want to thank Porsha Olayiwola, Catherine Kennedy from the Howard Thurman Center, Mayor Walsh, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, the Boston University Inner Strength Gospel Choir, and the Boston University Symphony Orchestra, and the rest of our participants this afternoon for their inspiring remarks, readings, and music. It has been a truly wonderful program. If you agree, please give them all a round of applause. Now, each year we gather to remember the words and actions of Martin Luther King Jr. and their relationship to our time for our community, our nation, and the world. For the university, this gathering is the first of the spring semester and the first of the new year. As such, it is an opportunity for a New Year's resolution of sort for the community. There have been very few times in my life when I feel more need for a universal New Year's resolution, or at least a national New Year's resolution. My resolution for each of us is that we commit to moral leadership in our individual lives in 2019. I believe if we do so, we honor Martin Luther King Jr. and make our world a better place. Each September, the university welcomes a new cohort of freshmen to our community. And each September at our matriculation exercises for the freshman class, I remind our students that Martin Luther King Jr. studied and earned his doctorate at Boston University School of Theology. There are many, many touch points that I could select that would connect his words to our students and our community. But I always go back to his aspirational dream: that people be judged not by the color of their skins, but by their content of their character, their actions, and their accomplishments. During his life, Martin Luther King extolled us to exert the moral leadership needed to make America the land of opportunity imagined by our forefathers, but for all people. And that was the sum of his dream. He did this at a time of enormous strife in this country, a time of economic and racial divides, a time of an unpopular war fed by inequitable involuntary service. This was the time of my youth in Central Texas. As a child, I remember theaters with two entrances and buses with two kinds of seats. I was raised in what you would refer to as the poor side of town, families living paycheck to paycheck, where many of my best friends were Mexican Americans. As teenagers, we all aspired to find our version of the American dream, many dealing with the draft. We have come a long way from this world because of leaders in that time who seized the opportunity for change. Like Abraham Lincoln before them, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, and John Sullivan all saw the need to move America forward to a more just and inclusive society, and seized the opportunity in their time to push for change. Appropriately, we celebrate what they accomplished through their courageous leadership. It is also wonderful that the city of Boston is moving to permanently honor Dr. King by constructing a memorial to his legacy. Celebrating the accomplishments and legacies of Dr. King and other leaders is important. But there is also an important question for all of us to answer. Where have the leaders gone? Who in our time has the moral vision, courage, strength of will, and ability to move us closer to the world Dr. King envisioned? This afternoon, we have had the privilege to have some of this generation's leaders with us. We are buoyed by their strength and vision. But no matter the inner strength and ability of these individuals, each of us in our own way has the opportunity to show leadership that will make our community and society a better place. As a university community, we are making progress toward making our university more inclusive. 2 years ago, Boston University moved to meet full financial need without loans for all Pell Grant recipients in our freshman class, making the university accessible to students who would not otherwise be able to attend. Thank you. The results have been remarkable. With the increase in Pell Grant recipients has come more first-generation college students and more students of color in our freshman class. I can see that change looking out at the faces at matriculation and walking down Commonwealth Avenue. But we are still far done from truly delivering on Martin Luther King's dream. Now we must deliver on the opportunity afforded by our increased diversity, by creating a more inclusive community for everyone. We must guarantee that all our students thrive here and leave Boston University ready to change the world. We've heard some wonderful examples of that this afternoon. All of us have a role in making Boston University a small part of a better world imagined by Dr. King. We can lead in making the community more inclusive, that is more open and supportive of all, irrespective of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Howard Thurman was dean of Marsh Chapel from 1953 to 1965 and was mentored to Dr. King. He extolled the virtues of finding common ground of our shared humanity as a way of breaking down the barriers that lead to bias. Our Center for Common Ground is named in his honor and thrives because of Catherine Kennedy, to be this place for all of our students. Through formal and informal meetings, the Thurman Center is the focal point in the lives of many of our students, all while hidden away on the garden level of this building. Some people call it the basement. I am confident that the Thurman Center can play an even larger role in creating an inclusive community at Boston University, and we are moving to make that possible. Construction is underway just down the street that will move the Thurman Center to the crossroads of our campus as the anchor in 808 Commonwealth Avenue. For all of you old-timers like me, that's the Cadillac Fuller building. By next year, the Thurman Center will move to its new home, and I hope when we have this gathering, we can all go and see it. Songwriter John Haller, in his ballad, Abraham, Martin, and John, lamented the passing and the void left behind by some of the great leaders of the past. He wrote, "Has anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. But I just looked around and he's gone." When referring to King, Kennedy, and Lincoln, he ends, "Didn't you love the things they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me?" As we leave this afternoon and dedicate ourselves to moral leadership, I wish that all of us will dedicate ourselves to working to create an inclusive community, whether it's Boston or Boston University, in a community where Martin Luther King's dream can be fulfilled. Find the good in us, for all of us, and for you and me. Thank you for being here today. Please take care on the ice.
Dr. King said, "An important part of the mass meetings were the freedom songs. In a sense, the freedom songs are more than just incantations of clever phrases designed to invigorate a campaign. They are as old as the history of the Negro in America. They are adaptations of the songs the slaves sang, the sorrow songs, the shouts for joy, the battle hymns, and anthems of our movement. I have heard people talk of their beat and rhythm, but we in the movement are as inspired by their words. These songs bind us together, give us courage together, help us march together. Please join us in a sing-along led by Pierre Gardy Fontaine and conductor Mata Zorad with the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras.
Yes, please do stand up. Would you lift your voice and sing till earth and heaven ring? Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Please do join me and sing together with me.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that our dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it, oh, everywhere. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Yes. Would you join hands together? Join hands together as we sing, as it is customary here, singing together, "We shall overcome someday." Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone today. Today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
I know you all are leaving, so I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you from our mayor, from the president of Boston University, from the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras, from BU Inner Strength, and all of us. We hope that our message and our words uplift you today as they are uplifting me, obviously through my tears. And thank you again, and get home safely.